Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show today. I am Zach, the founder of Bernie Ballers, and I am alongside Aiden, the founder of IDP Center. And today we're going to be talking about a mock draft that we recently did, but we also did a podcast on this recently. But today we're going to be talking specifically about the team structures and weak points and strong points of every single team, and things that they can do to better their team. And also, we're going to be talking about who the championship contenders are this year and who the possible dynasties are from that mock draft. But first, we're going to be talking about some playoff movers. So as far as playoff movers, a little playoff wrap up. Aiden, do you have any playoff? You can first introduce or say hi to everybody, and then after that, do you have any playoff movers from the championship round in the Super Bowl?
Yep, definitely. Super happy to be here again. Excited to do this pod with you again, Zach. Think it's been going great. Our third pod of the year. We're gonna keep it moving, keep improving, and keep getting some great info out there. In terms of my first biggest playoff mover will be Travis Kelce. He's already had talks about retirement. It's been an ongoing kind of narrative around him, and he said that he's gonna take some time to determine it. And right now, I'm completely steering clear of him in any dynasty startup drafts unless it's like round 12 or later, give or take, because he's already kind of taken a step back this year. In most standard league scorings, he had his lowest point total in terms of fantasy points for the season since 2015. So when he's starting to take that true step back, kind of believe him in that regard. And there's the narrative that, oh, yeah, the Chiefs were just saving him throughout the regular season. He still got it. He's going to show us what he can do in the playoffs. Yeah, in the division rounds, he did well. However, in the conference championships and Super Bowl, his combined stat line for those two games was 10 targets for 6 receptions and 58 yards, no touchdowns. That is not going to really do it for a fantasy asset. And even if Kelce does end up coming back, are they just going to, quote unquote, save him for the postseason throughout the entirety of the regular season, which obviously doesn't help us in terms of fantasy? And does he just not quite have that same go power as he used to, especially with Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy coming on and such? What are your thoughts, Zach?
That's a very good point. I didn't think about the saving him for the playoffs point, but overall, I think that he's going to come back and try to play the villain role. You see that interview going on all over social media about the reporter jokingly asking him about the refs rigging the game. I think versus who is it, the Bills? Pre-Super Bowl, the reporter asked him about the referees rigging the game for the Chiefs, and you can just see his facial expression. He was having no part of it, essentially. That alongside the fact that everybody's kind of making fun of him for, quote, giving up during the Super Bowl. There's that one play where Patrick Mahomes was scrambling around and Kelce was just kind of just standing there. And then the guy who essentially tackled Mahomes, was who Kelce could have blocked if he didn't just give up on a play. So the point that I'm making is I can see Kelce coming back and kind of playing a villain role and having fun with it in that sense. But you make a very good point about them possibly saving him for the playoffs. That would be the one downfall. But overall, though, especially per his ADP before he either confirms or denies retirement this year, his ADP is an ADP that I'm more than willing to gamble on for that possible upside. I mean, if he comes back and if they're not going to be saving him for the playoffs, I mean, that's sky-high potential with Kelce. And also, you mentioned before the podcast, Sam Darnold. I personally am not a JJ McCarthy believer. I think that he's a bust, and I think this gives JJ McCarthy holders a perfect opportunity to cash in and possibly go with, either switch it up at their quarterback position, go from JJ McCarthy to something else. But if I'm a JJ McCarthy holder right now, I'm cashing in right now. Sam Darnold, like you mentioned, he opened the door for JJ McCarthy, and that in itself kind of up JJ's value. So I think that right there, and me personally, I'm cashing in on JJ McCarthy. I don't think, unless he's a system fit and it works flawlessly for him, which I could see that happening, especially with Sam Darnold, but I just don't see JJ McCarthy as a long-term guy anywhere, unless it's a perfect system fit once again. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can definitely agree. I can definitely see that. I think it's going to end up dependent specifically on where his ADP ends up in terms of value or not. In this mock, he went at the 7.6 spot, which I see as a value for a potential upside QB. I can recognize he definitely can bust as well, but like that is after Michael Penix, after Tua, after Dak Prescott, and the such. So I think if he's and that's almost a round after them. So if it's a round after them, I do see him as a value at that point. However, I do think he's going to jump up into that round 4 or 5 range, or maybe even higher, as it becomes more clear that Sam Darnold is moving on and that he is going to be the main QB in the Kevin O'Connell system. So I do see that as a very interesting point just to see where he goes. The IDP Center has a startup draft for one of a true startup draft for one of our leagues coming up in the next couple of days. So I'm very curious to see where he ends up, or if there's going to be any change from this mock that we did to the true startup that we're going to have in a couple of days.
Yeah, that will be interesting. I'd be interested to see that myself, where he goes in that. All right, so if you want to get into the mock draft, the team structure breakdown, I'm ready for the. So we'll go over the pick order first. Once again, we'll hit on those. If you're on YouTube, you can see the pick order there, and then the full board coming up here. And we'll get into team one here. Start breaking down these teams. So team one, overall, I love the Jeudy pick because I think they're going to be taking a quarterback, and as soon as they take that quarterback, no matter who it is, I mean, the players like Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, all those players are going to start rising in value. And whether Judy's a long-term guy or not, I mean, even me as a Browns fan, I'm not sure, but all I know is for sure that Jeudy will be rising in value. He's one of the surefire, value risers this year or this offseason. So I love that pick there. That's kind of my overall assessment of this team as far as, well, first of all, I mean, the Strongs being quarterback and wide receiver and running back being the weak one. So maybe you can trade Jeudy, get a running back. There's a lot of potential there between Bucky and Ramondre, but it's just there's too much downside there. They both have, to me, a low floor. Maybe more so Ramondre than Bucky, but me, I'd be cashing in Jerry Jeudy maybe for a running back. Is there anything you'd possibly do here for this team?
Yeah, for sure. Just so touching on your Jerry Jeudy point, something that I think a lot of people have forgotten is he's right as of today, he is still 25 years old. He feels like he's like 27, 28 and already
Right.
like about to hop out of the league. He's still only 25. Yes, he's had 5 years of experience. He's continued to grow in this stuff, but like he's only 25, especially as dynasty asset. Huge plus in my opinion. I do think he showed us his ceiling last year, just because I don't think the Browns, whoever the Browns bring in, isn't going to be another James Winston. Just say screw it, chucking the ball up to Jerry Jeudy's out there somewhere, But I still think he might have will benefit from more consistent QB play from whoever your Browns bring in, and could be a great value riser there as well. And just a quick recap of that team one. So if you're not on YouTube, we have Joe Gannett Dunn taking Josh Allen at the 1.1 spot, Drake London at 212, Trey McBride at 3.1. Brock Purdy at 412, Bucky Irving at 5.1, Jameson Williams at 612, Jerry Jeudy round 7, Stevenson at round 8, Kittle at round 9, Charbonnet at round 10, Juwan Jennings at round 11, and his sleeper in round 12 was Rashid Shaheed. Very strong at tight end, in my opinion. Obviously, Trey McBride is a consensus tight end, top 2 tight end right now. Strong at QB, as you mentioned. I like his wide receivers. I am still high on Bucky Irving. I've been high on him since last year's draft. I have a ton of stocks on him in my many, many dynasty leagues. So I do think he continue to progress and maybe even take over that backfield with a new offensive coordinator in with the Bucks. Jameson Williams, I think, might have some regression in terms of big plays. But I am very, very low on Stevenson going into next year. I think the Patriots will draft someone around 3 or 4, especially in this deep running back class. But overall, otherwise, I agree with your analysis for sure.
Yeah, I love that. As far as Bucky Irving, going into the NFL draft, and especially after the NFL draft for rookie drafts last year, I did not like Bucky. I run an analytical series, and I found him as an anomaly. His BMI would be, if he ever finished top 10 PPR, which he finished PPR 12 this year, if he ever finishes top 10 PPR, he will be an anomaly due to his BMI at the NFL draft combine being so low. But he is starting to change my mind. I mean, because Rashad White, they essentially just force fed him the ball, and he was extremely inefficient. But Bucky Irving, I believe he's sitting around. I don't have it on my sheet here, but I believe he's sitting around like almost like a 5.0 yards per carry, I believe. And Rachaad White, he was not even. I believe he was struggling to get to 4 even. So as far as the Buccaneers, there, I mean, Bucky being on the Bucks and already having produced, I can see him having a phenomenal season. It's just long term, it's hard for me to invest in him because I know he is kind of an anomaly if he ever finishes top 10 PPR. But yeah, I agree completely with your assessment. And yeah, so that's for round one and also, or team one. And also, we're going to be talking about this year's winner. So once that team comes up, I'll be kind of announcing that for who I think this year's winner will be, kind of crowning the champion, so to speak. But it may or may not be my team. No, I'm joking. It won't be my team. All right, I'm ready for team 2.
Sounds good.
All right, going top to bottom, we have a quarterback, Jaden Daniels, selected in round 1. Saquon Barkley selected in round 2. Chuba Hubbard selected round 7. AJ Brown selected round 3. Roma Dunzi selected round 4. Mark Andrews in the 9th round. Mike Evans in the 6th round. Ricky Pearsall in the 8th round. Michael Wilson in the 10th round. Jared Goff in the 5th round. Blake Corum in the 11th round. And Ja'Tavion Sanders in the 12th round. I love that Ja'Tavion Sanders pick. As far as the team's weak spot, I do have tight end as their weak spot. It's kind of the same thing with Kelsey. I don't know how long or how much longer Mark Andrews has, especially after his infamous drop there. I do think that'll kind of lessen his value and increase worry surrounding him on that Ravens team. I don't think he's going to drop off like crazy, but as far as a long-term concern, I think there is one there with Wonder Beard's tight end group. So me personally, for this team, I would be, once again, with my analytics, I don't think this is actually an analytics finding with Blake Corum. I think I just personally do not like how small he is. Deuce Vaughn was a analytics finding for me. I believe his height and his weight both would be an anomaly if he ever had a great season. So, and Deuce Vaughn was kind of my comp for Blake Corum. So that's my big worry here. But I know he's extremely hyped up. So, maybe you can trade Corum, swap him for a tight end, or try to get a younger tight end that's possibly going to rise. That's kind of my big thing here. But he did great with his quarterbacks and running backs, obviously. I mean, imagine having any team with Jaden Daniels and Saquon Barkley. That's nothing but phenomenal. So what's your assessment of this team here?
Yeah, I agree overall. I think it's a very solid team. It might be more win now in terms of just having Barkley. I love the Hubbard pick in round 7. We might have talked about in the last pod, but with Jonathan Brooks going down to that significant knee injury, and with Chuba Hubbard now projected to be the workhorse running back for the Carolina Panthers, I think you could see great value. He already produced very well this past season. And with Bryce Young seemingly taking that step forward again, towards the end of the year, I could see that only continuing to grow going into next year. QB very strong with Goff and Daniels there. Goff is a nice safe pick. Daniels obviously has sky high upside, even at the 1.2 spot. Barkley, great pick there in round 2. I do have concerns about his injury, as mentioned in the last pod, but injury likelihood given the sheer amount of work that he's had this season. I love the Ja'Tavion Sanders. I completely agree with you. I love the Ja'Tavion Sanders tight end pick there. Same reasons that I like the Hubbard pick in that I think Bryce Young's going to continue to step forward. And Ja'Tavion Sanders as a sleeper pick in round 12 could be a great tight end. And I think that his timeline and Mark Andrews' timeline might overlap very nicely. I think Andrews will still be a tight end 1 just because the position is so desolate and just brutal all around once you get past like the top 4 or 5 guys. So I think Andrews will still be a back end tight end 1 for at least 1 more year. And after that, I think he might fall off dramatically. So maybe it's round 9 is a little early for Andrews. But what that means then is that if Sanders continues to develop, then Sanders will be in year 3, just team composition wise. So then once Sanders is in year 3, I think that he will emerge as a back end tight end 1, maybe mid tight end 1 with upside for a little bit more if he can hit his stride with Bryce Young. So I do like that tight end situation there, but I do agree that it might be, in terms of his team, one of the weaker spots when you consider that he's got Barkley, Daniels, AJ Brown, and Mike Evans and such to anchor the rest of his roster, at least in the near term.
Yeah, I agree. Mainly, it's a depth concern for me at tight end. I do love that you are willing to wait 3 years on a tight end. We've been blessed as of recent between Sam Laporta and Trey McBride. But yeah, you make a really good point there. It's mainly just the depth. I mean, if Mark Andrews, if he's about to be leaving or seeing his way out, or at least seeing a decline in production further than last year, you kind of need Ja'Tavion Sanders. You need him in that year 3 to be able to have a tight end group here. But so mainly it's a depth concern. But overall, I mean, I like this team though. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of just my dynasty strategy when it comes to tight ends. I tend to buy a lot of tight ends after their first year. Well, right now, that's Theo Johnson, Ja'Tavion Sanders, even like a Tucker Kraft, which I know is his second year, going to his third year. I see them as taking a step forward, and you can get most of these tight ends right now for third-round picks, maybe, give or take, And so I have a lot of Trey McBride from applying that same strategy. And once they break out, then I trade them at a huge value differential, and that's how I build out my dynasty rosters. I just almost seeing value through those tight ends because tight ends do tend to take, unless you're Brock Bowers, of course, or Laporta, tend to take 2 to 3 years to develop fully. That's a little holdover for my dynasty tight end strategies, personally.
I agree completely. I started really diving deeper into that same exact strategy when it would have been 2 years ago at this point. A new guy in one of our leagues, one of my close buddies' league, he dropped Trey McBride, just dropped him. He's seen that year 1 production was nothing, so he just dropped him. I was blown away. Trey McBride was my tight end 1 going into the draft, and I couldn't get him in that draft, but then he dropped him after the season. I was just blown away. I was trying to trade for the waiver wire just to be able to pick him up, but I wasn't able to, but I got him on the waiver wire because I was pretty low, so I was worried about getting him, but that's one of my calling cards. So once that happened, I started diving deep into the sitting and waiting and not necessarily drafting a tight end unless it's a really good rookie pick or a late rookie pick. And then just waiting for somebody to, see, they haven't produced anything in year 1. And especially with Sam Laporta, a lot more people are going to be, seeing their tight ends not producing in year 1 and think they're less value. So you can easily capitalize on that. Maybe not for the most part, but there's definitely going to be some people who draft a tight end, don't see a production year 1, and then think that they're worthless. So you can easily capitalize on that a little bit. So yeah, that was good for team 2. And so team 3 coming up here. So I'll go over it first. Brees Index. Lamar Jackson, round 1. James Cook, round 5. Derrick Henry, round 6. Nico Collins, round 2. Garrett Wilson, round 3. Tucker Kraft, round 11. Jaden Reed, round 7. James Conner, round 8. Chris Godwin, round 9. Baker Mayfield, round 4. Jonathan Brooks, round 10. And Darnell Mooney, round 12. So for me, I mean, I love this quarterback and running back, especially Jonathan Brooks. I would actually start him somewhere in one of those flex spots. I think this year he can easily take off just for his NFL draft capital alone. They're going to be trying to justify that as long as he can stay healthy. Obviously, that's the main concern. But if he can stay healthy, I fully believe he's going to be producing, well this year. So how about you? How do you like this team?
I like it pretty good overall. I think it does have solid depth, especially with Jonathan Brooks, hopefully eventually being able to slot in there. I think the community's yes, his injury sucks, and it does raise some red flags for me. However, that backfield is still kind of open after Chuba Hubbard. Yeah. And right now he's 2 rounds later than Trey Benson. And especially considering like where the community had them as a whole last year, like Brooks was the end of round 1, start of round 2 pick. Benson was more of a start of round 2, mid round 2 rookie pick. Now having him in a startup draft being 2 full rounds later than Benson, I can see that as a solid value pick there in the later rounds. I like Tucker Kraft. He's a nice little sleeper for me. His efficiency metrics were pretty solid last year. And Green Bay is still seeking a identity. So it's possible that Kraft has the upside to step into that primary role for Jordan Love, though it may not be the most likely, but like in round 11, I think that's a solid upside shot and just another back end tight end one, just another one of the big spread of guys that in the desolation land that is the tight end position right now.
Yeah, I agree completely. You're kind of relying. There's a little bit too much reliance with this team on Tucker Kraft, but in other words, there's no depth, and Tucker Kraft is not necessarily a for sure thing for me. So I'd be a little bit concerned, maybe even, I actually wrote down possibly trading Jonathan Brooks because you do have Derrick Henry and James Cook. So depending on what your plan is for this team, if you're trying to compete now, maybe trading Jonathan Brooks, maybe waiting a week or two to see how he does. If he starts producing well, he's going to get hyped up like crazy. High draft capital, and then you have, early production, and obviously injury concerns. So maybe capitalize on that first week or two of high production if that does happen with maybe trading him for a tight end. I'd still be a little bit, once again, concerned with relying on Tucker Kraft there, but I do. This is definitely a contender this year. I definitely see that, especially Jaden Reed. I love that pick. And James Conner. So yeah, those are great, kind of picks.
I do think that like the tight end position, we only went 11 true rounds, and round 12 was our sleeper round. It is a bit hard, I feel, to get true depth at a tight end position, especially given the depth at that position in general, in just 11 to 12 rounds. But I can definitely agree. Tucker Kraft can easily become a nobody again next year, or he could take off, in my opinion. So it's definitely a risk reward pick by Brees there. I do overall think that Brees has probably like one of the top tier teams in terms of competing, personally.
Yeah, it's a good point with the depth. We should do the next podcast. We should do like a waiver wire round and do a podcast on that. See how everybody does. More sleeper picks there too. That'd be a fun one.
Yep, we can talk about it for sure.
Yeah. All right. So team 4. So I have it wrote down. This is the championship team this year. No, I'm joking. This definitely is not the championship team. So this is my team. So I had Christian McCaffrey. That was an auto pick. I don't want to say a failure, but it definitely was a little bit early in round 3. So once I had that little mishap with Christian McCaffrey in the auto pick, I started going really old. Besides Trey Benson there, I just love Trey Benson. So from top to bottom, we have Patrick Mahomes in round 1, Christian McCaffrey round 3, Trey Benson round 8, Brandon Aiyuk round 5, Michael Pittman round 6, Sam Laporta round 4, Travis Kelce round 7, Rashad White round 9, Tank Dell round 10, Jordan Love round 2, Christian Kirk round 11, and Romeo Doubs round 12. And my notes to help this team is I just wrote down blow it up and tank. No, I'm joking. No, so yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly proud of this one. Me personally, I'd be trading Christian McCaffrey ASAP to basically sum it up. It's a little bit of a weird tandem, and this is why they're essentially uncompatible running backs. That's why I don't, or I think that I should probably blow it up here if this was, an actual league. Because when I say uncompatible, I mean Christian McCaffrey, he's obviously compete now, if he can even withstand that. And Trey Benson, he's obviously a long-term running back. So that's my main concern there. That's what I mean by uncompatible running backs. Other than that, though, I mean, I love the production between Aiyuk, or at least the previous production between Aiyuk, Pittman, Laporta, and once again, I gambled on Kelce. If he comes back, I can see there being sky high potential, and I love this pick. If he comes back, and if he does not, or if the Chiefs do not save him for the playoffs, that's a very good point by you. But if they do not save him for the playoffs, I love this pick, honestly. In round 7, Patrick Mahomes, I know he did not produce well, but I love those quarterbacks in fantasy football. I love those Jared Goffs who they're sustainable, PPR 10. I just love that consistency in my fantasy football quarterback. So I want to hear your critique on my team here.
Gotcha. Yeah. I love your QB position. I agree with your Mahomes take in that, especially at the end of the year, he started throwing the ball up more, and his numbers definitely came up. So going into next year, he's going to hopefully have a healthy Rashee Rice, hopefully have Xavier Worthy taking that step forward. I do think they're going to add someone in free agency in terms of their pass catching core. Because I don't think maybe they'll bring back Marquise Brown, maybe they'll bring back D-Hop, but I don't expect them to. So I do expect them to add someone in free agency, probably not a top tier name, but a functional wide receiver 3. Travis Kelce returns will obviously help that as well in the tight end position, but also Noah Gray has been okay, fine. Obviously not Travis Kelce, but okay-ish in that tight end position for KC. So I can easily see Mahomes having another solid production year. He'll always have a little bit of rushing production as well. He had a rough first half of the year, which will probably depress his ADP in most leagues, but I still think it will be solid for many years to come, and it's a very solid QB1. Jordan Love rounds out a solid QB2 position as well. Again, sky high upside as well for me. Christian McCaffrey, I think if this was a real team, I would not sell him right now. I will wait until week 2 of the fantasy season. He's probably coming back, hopefully healthy, we expect. And if he has a 25-point week in week 1, you can sell him for pretty solid value back in return. I feel like right now, all people remember are just the repeated injuries and the hassle of CMC managers last season, and his value is going to be depressed. You wait until he has one 25-point week, and that's it. His value will shoot back up, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Your tight end position is obviously strong with Laporta and Kelce there. Aiyuk, I do have some concerns about personally, just because his really good season was primarily born of hyper efficiency. And when yes, that system for the 49ers is great, it does raise concerns in my mind in that will he ever get back to that kind of hyper efficiency again, or will he just kind of regress and be just a solid kind of wide receiver 2 area, which I think is fine for where you got him in round 5. It's just not quite where I would have hoped to. But overall, otherwise, I do like your team quite well.
Yeah, I do understand that Aiyuk concern too. I think he was maybe 10 points per game last year, if that. I do definitely understand that concern. I'm just a big Aiyuk guy. I'm kind of coming out with my analytical model finally after a full year of researching, and even he in the early days of that model has been pretty high on it. So I'm just a big Aiyuk guy is essentially what I'm saying. So I can understand your concern though, definitely with that.
Sounds good. Okay.
So team 5.
Team 5 was mine. I can read it off if you like.
Okay.
We got Mahomes in round 1. Oh, sorry. That's your team. I got Jalen Hurts in round 1, Brian Thomas round 2, Ladd McConkey round 3, Higgins round 4, Bryce Young round 5, Xavier Worthy round 6, Jacoby Myers round 7, Jalen Warren round 8, Jalen McMillan round 9, J.K. Dobbins round 10, Ben Sinnot at round 11, and my sleepers Will Shipley in round 12. Do your worst.
So I like it overall. I really do. So this brings up an interesting topic though between Tee Higgins. What would be your plan with Tee Higgins this year? Are you keeping him? Are you selling him? Are you basically hold or sell?
I am keeping him. A lot of the issues for the past couple of seasons why his per game averages has been very poor is because of injuries or him playing 2 snaps and then coming out of the game, and that just puts a 0 in his game log. So his per game averages are going to be down. If you kind of take those games out, he's been very solid in around 14, 15 PPR points per game per season. So for me, for round 4 there, being my wide receiver 3, I'm quite happy with Tee Higgins. And I think there's a big possibility he returns to the Bengals, in which case, we'll continue to see what he's had with Burrow. I don't think there's going to be any major change in terms of production, except for potential just health upside if he plays the full season, which of course means that there are injury downsides as well. However, if he moves on to a different team, I can easily see him increasing in target volume and efficiency, perhaps. Well, maybe not efficiency, but primarily target volume there with a different QB as their wide receiver 1. That's just kind of my take there on Higgins.
I agree. I can see that. I definitely love your wide receivers. Brian Thomas, I mean, you essentially drafted the next. I know they're completely different wide receivers, but as far as production is concerned, you definitely just drafted the next Tyreek Hill in round 2 for the next. You're going to have him for the next 5, maybe 10 years. So I do love your obviously quarterback and wide receiver. Shout out to Jalen Hurts taking down Mahomes. Somebody finally did it. Tight end is kind of the same concern with me as what I was mentioning with Tucker Kraft. You're putting a lot of I get once again there's no depth ability, but as your tight end 1, Benson, I love him. I think he's the next possibly Jason Witten kind of a player. But you're just putting a lot of stock into somebody who kind of hasn't produced yet, which I kind of get it. Like I do love that. Like I love this team. I love this construction. And like me personally, I would love that risk because I believe in Ben Sinnot, put your money where your mouth is kind of a deal. So I love that pick. I love that he is your tight end one long term. But I just would be essentially kind of almost hedging that position, possibly trying to find somewhere else. Maybe if you can find a Will Shipley or a Jalen McMillan lover and, ship one of them off to, or maybe even Jacoby Myers, and he's consistent. I love him too. I love his consistency over the last, 6-7 years, maybe. So maybe you can, hedge your tight end there with, shipping off one of those wide receivers, maybe. I don't know. Just something to think about there. But
I definitely agree. I think I approached this one like how I would a true dynasty startup. In a true dynasty startup, I'll probably have like a rookie first round pick. I might look towards Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland or one of those tight ends in the class there to help round up my tight end group, or use up some later picks on them. I might have gone for Sanders in round 12 or something like that instead of Shipley if it was a true, like how I truly compose a team. Because I just love having a solid wide receiver core with those 4, 5, 6 wide receivers that will fill in my flex spots and such in PPR, and then just kind of running 0 RB, 0 tight end, and just kind of filling those in as I go year by year. That's just kind of my overall dynasty strategy.
I like that.
But yeah.
Smart. I like that. Yeah, definitely. All right. I know I'm going to get some hate for this for Team 6, but JJ McCarthy, that's my big takeaway here. But I'll run through it first, though. Drake May, round 3. This is a Luke index. Round 3, Drake May. Chase Brown, round 6. Isaac Guerendo, round 12. Jamar Chase, round 1. Rashee Rice, round 4. Brock Bowers, round 2. George Pickens, round 5. TJ Hawkinson, round 8. Keon Coleman, round 9. JJ McCarthy, round 7. David Njoku, round 10. Jonnu Smith, round 11. So this, I love it overall. I have them pegged as one of my possible dynasties in this league. I love the running backs. I love the long term. I mean, they're mid to late, both of them. Isaac Guerendo, I think obviously we're talking about CMC kind of going out the door. Who's there to replace him? Who's already, kind of flashed? Isaac Guerendo. Great pick there. Chase Brown, he's already produced. Drake May, he's already produced. I mean, at least to a point that Patriots, they're a believer in him. Jamar Chase, obviously, no doubt there. Rashee Rice, wide receiver 2 or better there in KC. This team overall, the construction overall is just, I mean, I love it. But JJ McCarthy, though, I've been adamantly against him long term as the guy there. So this is why I think he's a great dynasty contender, but not necessarily this year. He needs that system to work for him this year more so than his own skill set working. So if you can trade JJ McCarthy, I don't know. I just, that's my big takeaway there. If you can trade away JJ McCarthy, get somebody to fill in that spot there, that super flex spot. I mean, like I said, he's going to be, increasing in value. So you can easily replace him with, there's obviously going to be some JJ McCarthy lovers. So that's an easy replacement. I feel like he can be had. And, yeah, I mean, overall, I love this team construction, though, in a dynasty, in a long-term aspect.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think especially JJ McCarthy is in the Kevin O'Connell system, which I think will help contribute to the hype around him and further increase his value, the system might work for him this year, but he could also be a great sell high opportunity. You can probably maybe get like one of the QBs that went in round 6 or even round 5 from JJ McCarthy there. The biggest takeaway from me from Luke's team here is I found where all the tight end depth is. He's got Brock Bowers, TJ Hawkinson, David Njoku, Jonnu Smith, all in the first 11 rounds. For me, obviously, tons of tight end depth there. That detracts away from his other positions. Like you have Brock Bowers, you don't really need TJ Hawkinson and Njoku and Jonnu Smith back there as well. I just don't pursue tight ends that strongly unless it's tight end premium, especially if I already have one of the top tiers. Like if I have no one, if I missed out on Bowers, Laporta, McBride, even Kittle to a degree, then I'll look at a TJ Hawkinson, a Njoku, a Smith, Tucker Kraft, etc., and maybe load up on a couple of those in the late rounds. But haven't had, with this not being tight end premium and having had Brock Bowers, I think it's just an overinvestment in the tight end position, especially when there's so much rotation through the position year to year. But otherwise, I agree with you. His positionals are very strong. Obviously, wide receivers anchored by Jamar Chase, QBs anchored by Drake May. I know your take on JJ McCarthy, of course. I love Chase Brown and Isaac Guerrero as the running backs in terms of long-term upside, as you said. I am a little bit concerned about George Pickens in that I don't know if the Steelers will extend him after his rookie contract. And I think we are starting to develop a little bit of a history of Steelers wide receivers crashing out as soon as they leave the Steelers, whether that's Deontay Johnson most recently, Antonio Brown in the past, et cetera, et cetera. And George Pickens has obviously shown little bit of an inclination towards that as well. So I do have a little concern that if he leaves the Steelers, that he's just going to crash and burn in terms of that long-term upside. But overall, I like the team.
Yeah, I agree. So for every team, it's funny that you mentioned George Pickens because for every team, I wrote a weak spot, as in positional weak spot, and a strong weak spot or a strong position. But for team 6, my strong spot is everything because I see the consistency in this. I see a playoff contender in this team. But for my weak spot, I don't know, you probably can't see that, but for my weak spot, I just wrote George Pickens. So we're talking JJ McCarthy. If you can package JJ McCarthy plus George Pickens plus one of those tight ends, I think that puts his team over the top and makes him a championship contender. That player you can get from that package is going to be pretty solid. So this team, that's why I have them as one of my dynasty teams. Not necessarily a championship contender this year, but overall, though, I do love this team as far as its contention. So team 7, Bronc Index. So going from top to bottom, Tua Tagovailoa. I always struggle with that. Round 5, Devon A-Chain, round 3, Kyren Williams, round 4, Justin Jefferson, round 1, Malik Neighbors, round 2, Dalton Kincaid, round 9, Alvin Kamara, round 7, Cortland Sutton, round 8, Quentin Johnson, round 10, Michael Penix, round 6, Rico Dowdle, round 11, Jordan Whittington, round 12. The weak spot here, I think, is maybe possibly glaring, but quarterback, long-term and this year. And without a replacement there, I'm very concerned about this, or I'd be concerned about this. But obviously, the strong point here, wide receiver, Malik Neighbors and Justin Jefferson with a lot of possible contenders. I love the Quentin Johnson pick, round 10. His rookie season, everybody was deeming him a bust, and he kind of started ascending in value last year due to his production. So I love that round 10 pick there. For me, though, I mean, I could see the contender in this long term, but I'd be trading Kamara. I'd be cashing in that right now. I just don't think you have enough depth at quarterback possibly to contend. So I'd be possibly swapping Kamara for a quarterback, maybe a young quarterback. I'm curious what you think there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Kamara in round 7 is also just a bit too early for me, especially with like David Montgomery, Joe Mixon going right after them, Pacheco, Brian Robertson. I prefer any of those running backs over Kamara just because he is old. He is at that age cliff. I think using Derrick Henry as a model might not be the best thing for Kamara. He's at the age cliff. His value could dissolve to nothing next season.
Yeah.
I do love his other running back pairing though in Kyren Williams and Devon A-Chain. Kyren Williams, I was actually what he got at the 4-6 spot. I was looking at him in round 3 at the 3.5 spot. I don't know why he's perpetually underrated. He's the clear workhorse back for the Rams. His efficiency metrics are fine, not off the charts, but he's again 90% plus of the running back touches for the Rams, which is just an insane workload. And he's still going in the mid-round 4 spot there for me. So I think that's a great value pick there. His positionals are very strong, as you mentioned, with Justin Jefferson, Neighbors, followed up by his running back crew anchored by A-Chain and Williams. I agree. I think tight end's a little weak. I'm a little nervous about Dalton Kincaid, especially after the big drop there in the conference championships. His QB position also a little bit weak or concerning in terms of I don't know how Penix is going to turn out yet. I think that's kind of a coin flip. And then his QB2 spot is going to be in question. However, if this was a real startup, if in rounds 12 through 15-ish, if he loads up on the Jameis Winstons of the world, then, maybe he could slot someone in there and find the QB2 during the season.
Yeah, I do apologize about that. I missed Michael Penix there. I do see that depth, but I'd still be concerned about Tua being your first quarterback drafted. But I do love Michael Penix, so I see the depth there. But overall, still, I'd be concerned about the depth, like you kind of mentioned there. As far as Team 8, so here's my weak spot for everybody on YouTube. As you see, there's nothing there. So congrats, Lujo22. You are the championship winner this year for me. I just love this team top down this year. I think every single week you can have you can have multiple players every single week going off. You have Jackson Smith and Najigba. I'm sorry, I'll start at the top and go down. I'll go do the breakdown first. So Joe Burrow, round 1. Jahmyr Gibbs, round 2. Joe Mixon, round 7. Jackson Smith and Najigba, round 4. Devontae Smith, round 5. K. Dotton, round 11. Jordan Addison, round 5. Tyrone Tracy, round 8. DeAndre Smith, round 9. Bo Nix, round 3. Devontae Adams, round 10. And Jalen Coker, round 12. Yeah, I just think every single week you're going to have multiple people going off. No matter who that is, I don't know. I don't see the strong tight end depth, but I don't think you need it, honestly, this year. I think, just top down. I just love this team for this year, at least, simply put. How do you feel about it?
I have the exact same conclusion as you. I had him down as the best team here from Lou here. His QB position solid from now and the future in terms of Joe Burrow and Bo Nix. I do think Bo Nix will have some solid production, solid upside as well in that QB2 slot. Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously, he's just great. JSN, upside there as well. And now we're getting trade rumors of potentially of DK Metcalf moving on. If he does, that's just JSN to the moon. Devonta Smith, I think perpetually underrated, has that injury upside if Goddard or AJ Brown goes down. And he still does produce well. I think next year the Eagles will be forced to throw the ball a bit more, and Smith and AJ Brown will be primary beneficiaries of that. Jordan Addison, it's going to be a little interesting to see how that QB system, that QB situation plays out.
Yeah.
I think he does have that as your wide receiver 3. Can't really go wrong with that. Joe Mixon, Tyrone Tracy, great running backs there to continue to round out that running back group, followed by DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, super interesting here with the coaching change in Chicago. I think he does have significant upside to be a hyper-efficient back now. I don't think he's going to get the goal line usage that we might like from a running back. However, in round 9, as his RB4, super thrilled about that. Yeah. Adams, obviously old, but again, round 10, you're getting great value for that, for someone that could be a wide receiver 1-2-ish in terms of production as his wide receiver 4. He's getting that in round 10. Jalen Coker, great upside, sleeper pick there in Carolina. I've talked at length already about how I like Bryce Young to continue to develop and that taking that entire Panthers offense with him. Round 12, love that. Kate Otten, I think, is a little iffy at tight end, but there is some potential upside there if Godwin moves on. We did see a brief flash from him about mid-season this past year. So tight end might be his only one weak spot, but his depth at the other positions are just superb. So love his team overall.
Yeah, I agree. I see Kate Otten as that prototypical tight end, so that's kind of why I love that pick there. I didn't even know that about DK Metcalf, though. That's pretty interesting. And I crowned this team the champion with my hate for Bo Nix. I don't hate him. I just think he's a lot like Mac Jones, highly efficient. Just needed the right system. So I'm crowning them as the championship while not being the biggest fan of some of his teams. So that tells you how much I love this team. So congrats, Lujo. You're this year's champion in my book. But moving on, though, I'm ready for Team 9. I've always struggled trying to pronounce that name, Malali. But that was my best attempt. Justin Herbert, round 1. Brees Hall, round 3. Josh Jacobs, round 4. Zay Flowers, round 5. Terry McLaurin, round 6. Pat Friermuth, round 11. Josh Downs, round 7. Khalil Shakur, round 8. Najee Harris, round 9. CJ Stroud, round 2. Tajay Spears, round 10. And Tank Bigsby, round 12. So here, I struggle with this tight end here. And we keep talking about tight ends. Maybe that's just my way of doing things, but I don't see the depth, and I maybe it might be a little bit biased, but it's hard for me to see Pat Friermuth as the next Heath Miller, like a lot of people think. So, but everything else though it's strong. I just don't see the championship contender in this year. I do have them as a dynasty contender. But I mean, overall though, I mean, dynasty contender, possibly championship, but maybe it was because I looked at this team after Lujo's team. Maybe it's kind of a little bit biased in that way too, but I fell in love with Lujo's team, and the first come is always the best, like MJ versus LeBron. But overall though, I love this team, just that tight end position, Pat Friermuth. It's hard to see the upside there with me personally, but I'm curious what you think though.
Yeah, I like the team overall. I think it's going to be a very interesting team that we might look back in 1 year and be like, wow, we were completely wrong with. Because it's going to depend if Justin Herbert takes that step forward. It's going to be a great end of round 1 value. CJ Stroud bounces it back. I mean, he was the 1.04 overall in Dynasty startups last year. So, like, if CJ Stroud bounces back, he's going to be a great value there. Brees Hall, same thing. He was early round 2, late round 1 last year in startup drafts. So, like, and he's getting him at the end of round 3. If he bounces back again, there's lots of room for bounce back potential here. Might be a comeback player of the year type team for Malali, and we'll be looking back like, dang, we were completely off there. But as it stands right now, it's not my favorite team in the draft. Just in terms of the same things I just mentioned, it relies on a lot of comebacks. But I do think it has that upside to surprise a lot of teams.
Yeah, I agree completely. Zay Flowers, he gets a lot of hate because he's a Baltimore receiver. Those historically have not been great, but Zay Flowers is a player that I think, highly underrated. So I see a lot of the value here. Justin Herbert, obviously your prototypical quarterback that, borderline generational if he takes that step forward. But so yeah, I agree completely with your assessment there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially just piggyback off that Zay Flowers point really briefly. If Mark Andrews is going to take that step back or leave potentially, especially with Baltimore throwing more and Lamar Jackson just throwing better, I think Zay Flowers could be a great beneficiary there.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point. All right, Team 10, infinite number. Round 1, Caleb Williams, Kenneth Walker, round 5, Isaiah Pacheco, round 7. For his wide receivers, you have Marvin Harrison, round 2, Jalen Waddle, round 4. His tight end, round 8, Kyle Pitts, love that. DK Metcalf, round 6. Tony Pollard, round 9. Xavier Legette, round 10. Kyler Murray, round 3. Stephon Diggs, round 11. I believe that's Marvin Mims, round 12. So I didn't even know about that. That's interesting news to me. I didn't know that DK was being floated around the trade talks there. So
yeah,
I love
it might just be rumors, but I saw some things linking him back to the Raiders potentially with, I think, Pete Carroll over there. It might just be fluff, but just the prospect of that alone is enough, is enough to like cue me into JSN. I don't think it will change Metcalf's value immensely, but it just has that little glimmer of hope of JSN just shooting absolutely upwards.
Yeah, right. I love that though. And if you can pair, if it is true, maybe you can pair DK with one of the younger quarterbacks. That makes sense for the Raiders since they're in quarterback talks with the draft, or maybe even like a Drake May, maybe sending him off to the Patriots. I don't know what I would have to sit down. I don't know if that would make sense just in terms of the cap room and team structure between sets. So don't quote me on that one, but that'd be cool to see. And I love Drake May. I have a lot of shares of him, so I would love to see DK with him or a Tee Higgins. Back to that conversation too. So I love the round 8 Kyle Pitts. For me, I've always struggled seeing Kyler Murray as a long-term quarterback there, and I think last year he was even starting to get a little bit of that concern was starting to take fruition there with how he was distributing the ball between Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. So, and I'm an Xavier Legette fan as well, but that rookie season production concerns me. So I wrote down possibly packaging Kyler Murray and Legette for possibly a long-term quarterback. Maybe there's someone out there that likes Legette and Murray, try to get maybe get a long-term quarterback there. So that's my
yeah. And I think I actually don't hate the Kyler Murray pick, just in terms of I think there's a shortage of starting QBs in the NFL. Just kind of simple as that. And I think Kyler's not, he's like a jerk off. He's not going to win a Super Bowl for the team. He's not going to carry a team to the Super Bowl, but he will also should be like sufficient enough to kind of function a team. So I find it hard to believe that he's just going to like kind of disappear from the league personally. So I do think he does have some shelf life. For me, the biggest kind of red flag on the team is Marvin Harrison at the 2.3 spot. Because after Harrison, you still had Neighbors on the board, Brian Thomas, Nico Collins, AJ Brown, Drake London, etc. on the board. So I would prefer any one of those other receivers to Marvin Harrison, just because I think that's the kind of same spot that Marvin Harrison went in last year's draft, and a lot of players behind him has overtaken him, and he produced well. Don't get me wrong, I think he was close to 900 yards or maybe a little bit more, but not quite what I would have wanted to see from early round 2 pick here. But otherwise, I do quite like his team. I like Waddle. Value even in round 4. I know it's a little bit high for most people, but I still do think he has this high upside, especially if Tyreek Hill may potentially move on. I like Legette, Mims, etc. So I do like the rest of his team overall.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the Neighbors point there. I think a lot of people wanted Marvin Harrison to produce like Malik Neighbors did produce. So I can definitely see taking or swapping those two players. I can see taking Marvin over the Nicos of the league still, just because Marvin is, he's been touted as a generational guy. So I can I see your point. And I can see taking Malik Neighbors over Marvin, but me personally, I wouldn't recommend it, but I would at least understand if somebody took Marvin over the Nicos of the league.
For sure.
All right, team 11. I think anybody can guess what the weak spot here is that I have wrote down. But I'm sorry, on YouTube, if you can see, there's no tight end was taken. I'm sure there's a plane there though. So quarterback Trevor Lawrence in round 3, running back Bijan Robinson round 2, Jonathan Taylor round 4, Puka Nacua round 1, Tyreek Hill round 5. Skipping tight end, going to the flex spots, David Montgomery, round 7, Brian Robinson, round 8, Calvin Ridley, round 9, Dak Prescott, round 6, Rashad Bateman, round 10, Andre Yosivos, round 11, Cedric Tillman, round 12. I love the Tillman sleeper pick. I think he has a lot of Nico Collins comparisons, and I can understand it with a possible young quarterback coming in to the Browns. So similar to my point on Jerry Jeudy, I can see the Tillman rising in value. I mean, right now, essentially, as soon as they take a quarterback, his value rises right there. So you've already profited on that Tillman pick. So, I mean, you can do a lot with this team. I mean, you can possibly, package maybe Tillman and Dak Prescott if you're not in it for the long haul. Maybe get a tight end or a young tight end. I mean, you can do so much with this team. I love the starting 4 though: Trevor Lawrence, Bijan Robinson, JT, Puka, and Tyreek Hill. I mean, I love it overall. It's just kind of that back end that kind of gets me.
Yeah,
How do you feel
that's
about it?
fair. I do kind of see that Bateman could potentially take a step forward to that point if Mark Andrews steps back, because Baltimore has been passing more this season. Regarding the tight end point, I was talking to Logan and Team 12 Lewis's. They're both international. Logan is, I think, UK. Lewis, I think, is somewhere Asian, I
Okay.
think. And I think they were sending cues, so they were all drafting some of their players so that they wouldn't hold us up. And then in round 11, in the draft board in total, we had Kraft go, Sinnot go, Smith
Yeah.
go, and Joku, and then Friermuth, and they had like 5 tight ends on their queue, and all of them went that round.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
that ended up happening. But overall, I mean, not my favorite team. I think he's very solid at running back there. Obviously, Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor there in round 4. I like Puka. Not sure if I like him at the end of round 1 ahead of CeeDee Lamb
Yeah.
quite yet, but I do like Puka a lot. So don't completely hate it. But yeah, not a bad team overall.
Yeah. I agree completely. That makes sense too. I don't knock it when somebody takes, 5 quarterbacks, no running backs, some wide receivers. So I figured that was a plan. But that makes sense though with the auto, pick issue. I feel your pain there, Logan. Christian McCaffrey 3. I feel your pain.
Yep.
All right, I'm ready for Team 12. So Team 12, Anthony Richardson round 4, Travis Etienne round 6, Aaron Jones round 11, CeeDee Lamb round 1, Amon-Ra St. Brown round 2, Chris Olave round 3, DJ Moore round 5, Debo Samuel round 9, Sam Darnold round 7, Geno Smith round 8, Hollywood Brown round 10, and Kendre Miller round 12. I love the Kendre Miller pick there. I'm a little bit worried about the Anthony Richardson pick. That's something that I kind of prided myself in calling his descent in value last year. I just see that surgery that he had and the Cam Newton surgery that he had after his MVP season, then his downfall after that surgery. And AR had that same exact surgery. But he did get I know I mentioned it on the last podcast. I guess AR got the same exact quarterback coach that was teaching Josh Allen before he or while he was rising in value. So I think his season 1, season 2, Josh Allen didn't do anything. Then, but I guess his coach, I don't know if he got him after season 2 or what, but something happened there where his quarterback coach is kind of the one who got credited a lot for Josh Allen's rise and his comeback. So Anthony Richardson just got that same exact quarterback coach. So I can see it. It's just the physical ability. I see Cam Newton's surgery, like I mentioned, and that's what initially concerned me and why I did not, do anything or touch Anthony Richardson in any one of my drafts last year. So if the physical ability is there, I would love to, take him. I love this pick, but that's just a big concern. And I don't know if you can come back from that surgery to where you were before it, back to 100%. So that's my big concern here. Everything else, though, I mean, you do have DJ Moore sitting down there. He's kind of a player that I put maybe you can, especially if Anthony Richardson does not work out. That's probably a player that you can. DJ Moore, that's probably a player that you can pivot from, maybe add to the tight end spot. Aaron Jones and Kendre Miller, I love those sleeper picks. Those are both good ones. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I like his team overall. I think QB is obviously the riskiest position he has, in terms of Anthony Richardson, as he just spoke about. But I also do notice that in terms of team comp, he did pick up. He's the only team in the league that picked up 3 QBs, and Sam Darnold, Anthony Richardson, and Geno Smith. If Anthony Richardson goes down, I do think Sam Darnold will step into that QB2 spot,
Yeah.
because I do expect Sam Darnold to get a starting QB position at somewhere in the league. So you should still be able to produce in that QB2 spot, and then Geno Smith can slide up to the QB1 spot for me. In terms of running back, I think a lot of people are fading Travis Etienne very far. Round 6, still a bit early for me. But with Liam Cohen there in Jacksonville, I can see Tank Bigsby kind of falling into the Bucky Irvin role, and then Travis Etienne into the pass catching role, kind of like Rashad White has been for the past 2 years, and just be a PPR hack. So I do think that the community overall is sleeping on Travis Etienne quite a bit, and he could easily be that primary pass catching back, because I think, to memory, Tank Bigsby in the past 2 seasons combined has 9 receptions off the top of my head. Might be a little wrong on that, but it's very, very low, I guess is my point. So I see Travis Etienne as being the primary pass catching back there in Jacksonville, and I think that could round out his running back room quite well, even if Aaron Jones doesn't have the longest shelf life. But Kendra Miller also has some solid upside there as his sleeper in round 12. His wide receiver core overall very solid. Tight end obviously had that issue with the auto draft. But yeah, QB is the primary glaring spot in terms of weakness on this team, but overall, I like the rest of the team quite well.
Yeah, I can definitely see Sam Darnold stepping in there and having almost like a Joe Flacco season for any team, really. Or maybe he'll find something long term. I think he's still pretty young. He's definitely not Joe Flacco age, but maybe he'll be the next Geno Smith there. So you got those back to back there. So that's good. So I think, did you declare Lujo as your championship for this year or championship?
Yep,
okay.
He was the primary one I looked at here, and you can see the full board here on YouTube. Lujo is definitely the one I'd be looking at as the primary favorite. I think Wonderbeer with just Jaden Daniels, Barkley, AJ Brown, Jared Goff, Mike Evans, if Evans has another solid year, can kind of contest or at least come in maybe as a runner-up. But I think Lujo is at least a favorite looking at it here in February.
Yeah, I agree completely. For dynasty rankings, possible 3 championships within maybe the next 5 years, I have Luke Index, Bronk Index, and Mullally. Those are my 3 dynasties. I don't know if you have anybody there. Maybe it's Lujo as well.
Yeah, I like Lujo as well, just because his team is so young, but somehow very good. Like the only older asset that might be concerned in terms of aging out is Joe Mixon, which you got in round 7, but he's a solid win now asset. Same with Devontae Adams, but you got him round 10. I'm okay with taking those older assets in those late rounds. I think, in fact, that's the best spot to take them at. So I do love him in terms of dynasty potential. That's why he's just like my clear winner all around. But I do think Infinite Numbers team, if things fall right, can be a very good long-term dynasty team. Caleb Williams still has that sky-high upside. Marvin Harrison, I mean, he was a very high draft pick, both rookie drafts and NFL-wise for a reason. So he has that potential, and his team's somewhat young overall. Kyle Pitts still has that potential for upside. He's still a little bit earlier than I hoped, but yeah, overall, I still think his team's pretty young with pretty high upside.
I agree with that, and I guess my idea there is, like I was mentioning, the Bo Nix dislike, and a little bit his depth might be a little bit old with Devontae Adams, maybe no tight end depth there. I get you can do a lot. You can turn this team into a dynasty contender easily. I just think that maybe that's where my bias with Bo Nix sets in. Maybe that's why I didn't include him in my dynasty team, or my dynasty top 3 possible dynasties, I should say. So yeah, overall though, this was fun. Maybe next time we'll do the waiver wire, see who picks up who. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Something there. Yeah, this was fun though. This is a good one.
Yep, sure.
You have anything to add before we go?
I think that's about it. I think the only other thing I would add is Bronk Index is also a strong contender for a dynasty run. Just team anchored by Justin Jefferson and neighbors. Solid young running back crew. Maybe ship off Kamara for that, but if Penix and Tua hold in there, he should have a very solid long-term shot as well.
Oh yeah, he'll have, especially if Tua, if he is a long-term, ends up being a long-term from this point. Yeah, that's a great roster right there. All right. Well, this was fun. This is a good one. And thanks everybody once again for joining this draft, and thanks again for putting it together. Like I said last time, I think it was 5 minutes from the time that we officially we're going to do it to the time that Aiden had 11 people or 10 people lined up to do it. So that was pretty awesome. So thanks again for everybody for joining the draft, for everybody watching our show today, and it was fun.
Yep. Have a good day, everyone.